Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to explore complex topics using some really carefully chosen sources, trying to get you the knowledge that counts, without all the noise.
That's the goal. Efficient understanding.
Exactly. And you're here because you want that bigger picture. Today, we're diving into something really fascinating, maybe even a bit startling at first.
Hmm.
We're looking at actual scientific evidence that seems to challenge physicalism.
Right, the standard view that everything is fundamentally physical stuff.
Yeah, that view. And this evidence seems to point towards something called analytic idealism, the idea that maybe, just maybe, reality is fundamentally mental.
And it's crucial, like you said, this isn't fringe stuff we're pulling out of thin air.
No, absolutely not. Our mission today is to look at rigorous empirical findings, specifically from, well, two main areas.
Foundations of physics and the neuroscience of consciousness.
That's it, findings from respected labs, published in journals, not paranormal claims.
Right, it's about looking at the data from established science and seeing where it leads, even if it challenges some long-held assumptions.
Okay, let's get into it. Starting with physics. The bedrock, you could say.
The very foundation.
So back in 2005, there was this essay in Nature, big deal journal.
Oh yeah, nature's top tier.
It was by a physicist, Richard Conn Henry, called The Mental Universe. And his conclusion was, well, pretty out there for the time.
He basically said the universe is entirely mental.
And that matter, our idea of physical matter, is just a prejudice. His words.
And the key thing, as you mentioned earlier, this wasn't just him philosophizing.
No.
He was drawing this conclusion directly from existing experimental results in quantum physics.
And it wasn't just a one-off thought, was it? What happened after 2005?
Well, that's what's so compelling. Since then, numerous experiments have really solidified these kinds of findings. We're talking studies in 2007, 2010, 2011, 2013, 2015, and a really significant one in 2018.
Wow, so a whole stream of research.
Yeah, consistently pointing towards a reality that behaves very differently from our everyday assumptions about physical objects.
Okay, so what's the core idea? What are these quantum experiments actually showing that made physicists like Henry say the universe is mental?
Okay, the absolute key takeaway, it seems, is that physical things, particles, whatever they is, don't appear to have definite properties like position or spin before you measure them.
So they don't exist in a specific state until looked at?
Essentially, yes.
Oh.
The properties, physicists call them observables, they only seem to, well, become definite at the moment of measurement. Think of it like a car's dashboard. The
Yeah.
dials, the speedometer, the fuel gauge, they only show a reading when they're actively measuring something, right?
Yeah, it makes sense.
The underlying thing, the actual speed, the actual fuel level, isn't the reading itself. The reading is how we observe it. Quantum mechanics suggests that at the fundamental level, reality might be a bit like that. The properties aren't just sitting there waiting to be read. The act of reading, of measuring, seems crucial for them to even be there.
That's profoundly weird. It feels like saying my coffee isn't hot until I touch the mug.
It is weird from our classical perspective.
Well-
That's exactly why it's shaking things up. It challenges that core idea of an objective, independent physical world just existing out there regardless of us.
Okay. Help me visualize this more. You mentioned an analogy. Alice and Bob.
Ah, yes, the entangled playing cards analogy, the Accenture Foundation uses it well. Imagine Alice and Bob each have cards, but they're special. Let's say Alice gets all the red cards from a deck, Bob gets all the black, they're miles apart, no phones, nothing.
Got it. Separated.
Now, if Alice looks at her top card and sees it's, say, the King of Hearts, quantum entanglement predicts, and experiments confirm this with particles.
That Bob instantly knows his card.
Not quite knows,
Yeah.
but his top card is guaranteed to be the King of Spades, instantly, no matter how far apart they are. There's no message sent, no physical link, we understand.
That's entanglement. Instant correlation at a distance.
Exactly. And it's been proven again and again experimentally.
So how does that support the idea that the physical world isn't standalone?
Well, the implication is that the properties like which specific king each person has weren't fixed before Alice looked. It wasn't pre-decided. The act of Alice mirroring her card instantly correlated with Bob's reality.
Ah, so they weren't carrying around King of Hearts and King of Spades all along?
That's the crux of it. It suggests the properties are merged together, linked by something deeper than physical space. It points to this idea that maybe the physical world we see, the particles with their measured properties, are like images, manifestations of a deeper reality that isn't constrained by space and doesn't have fixed physical properties until observed.
Okay, so bringing in analytic idealism, How does that framework explain these quantum results? You mentioned a soccer game.
Right. The soccer game metaphor is quite helpful here. Imagine a soccer match happening live in a stadium. That match itself, the event unfolding, represents the underlying reality, the thing in itself.
Okay, the real game.
Analytic idealism proposes that this underlying reality is fundamentally mental. Now, you're not in the stadium. You're at home, watching on TV.
Right.
You've chosen a channel, say, Channel 1. That channel uses specific cameras in the stadium, showing you the game from certain angles, the picture on your screen. That's not the actual game.
It's a representation, an image based on the camera's view.
Precisely. It's mediated.
Yep.
Now, imagine your neighbor is watching the same game, but on Channel 2, which uses different cameras.
So different angles, different perspectives on the same game.
Exactly. Now, if a goal is scored, both your screen and your neighbor's screen will show it, right? Maybe from slightly different views, but they'll be perfectly correlated in time.
Yeah, of course.
But is your TV causing the image on your neighbor's TV? And there's some signal going between the TVs.
No, that's silly. They're both just showing the same underlying event.
Exactly. And that's the analytic idealist interpretation of quantum entanglement. The physical world, the particles, the measurements are like the images on the TV screens. They're the dashboard. Entanglement, that spooky correlation, is like the correlated images on the different screens. There's no need for the TVs, the physical particles, to send faster than light signals between each other.
Because they're just different views of the same underlying soccer match.
Precisely. Their correlation comes from the shared underlying non-physical or mental, in this view, reality they're both manifesting or representing. Space and time, as constraints between physical objects, don't apply in the same way to this correlation because it's not fundamentally between those separated physical objects.
So entanglement isn't action at a distance. It's correlation between different measurements of the same deeper thing.
That's the idea. The physical world is the dashboard. Entanglement is the correlation between readings on different dials measuring the same underlying non-physical engine, if you will.
That actually makes a certain kind of sense. It avoids the faster-than-light weirdness.
It provides an alternative framework. Now, what does mainstream physicalism offer instead to explain these same results?
Good question. How do they stick with a purely physical reality?
Well, to keep the idea that physical reality is standalone and objective, even when unobserved, some interpretations have to propose some pretty wild things.
Like what?
The most famous is probably the many worlds interpretation. It suggests that every time a quantum measurement happens, the entire universe splits into multiple copies.
Wait, splits? Like new universes popping into existence?
Countless new universes, branching off every fraction of a second for every possible outcome of every quantum event.
That sounds extravagant.
It is, and the crucial point here is that there's absolutely zero empirical evidence for these other universes. We can't detect them, interact with them, nothing.
So it's purely theoretical postulation to save the idea of objective physical properties.
Essentially, yes. So the choice becomes, do you consider that maybe the physical world isn't standalone in the way we thought, based on the experiments we can do? Or do you postulate an infinite number of unobservable universes to keep the old view intact? That's kind of the dilemma the physics presents.
Definitely something to mull over. Okay, let's switch gears now. You said there's also evidence from neuroscience.
Yes, moving from the very large and very small to the workings of our own minds and brains. Specifically, research on consciousness and, interestingly, on psychedelic states.
Psychedelics, okay, how does that connect?
Well, from the standard physicalist view, the brain creates consciousness, right?
Yeah, more brain activity equals more consciousness, or at least different consciousness. That's the usual assumption.
Exactly. So if you take a psychedelic drug and have these incredibly intense, vivid, complex experiences, hallucinations, altered thinking, you'd expect your brain to be firing on all cylinders, wouldn't you?
Logically, yes. More subjective stuff happening should mean more neural activity generating it.
That was the expectation. But then, in 2012, a major study came out from Imperial College London. They looked at psilocybin, the compound, in magic mushrooms.
What did they find?
Completely the opposite of what was expected. Psilocybin significantly decreased brain activity.
Decrease.
Yeah, measured by cerebral blood flow and metabolism. Key areas of the brain became less active, not more.
Wow. So people are having these mind-blowing experiences while their brains are actually powering down in certain ways.
That's what the data showed. And it wasn't a fluke. This finding has been replicated robustly since then.
For other psychedelics, too.
Yeah, LSD, DMT, ayahuasca, Different labs, different substances, same core finding. Reduced activity in key networks like the default mode network.
Okay, that throws a serious wrench in this simple brain activity experience idea, doesn't it?
It poses a major challenge. If experience is just generated by brain metabolism, how can you have a vastly richer, more intense experience when the metabolic activity is going down?
Right. How does analytic idealism handle that finding? It seems just as counterintuitive at first glance.
Well, analytic idealism has a different starting point. It doesn't assume the brain generates consciousness from scratch. It views consciousness as fundamental. So, the idea is that our normal waking consciousness is a kind of dissociated or filtered aspect of this fundamental consciousness. Think of it like an alter personality, separate from the
The
whole.
alter mentality you mentioned. Our everyday self is a localized bubble within a larger mental field.
Exactly. Now, the brain activity we measure is seen as the image or the correlate of this localized dissociated mental activity. The contents of your thoughts,
Yeah.
your perceptions, they should correlate with brain activity? Sure. That part isn't disputed.
But there's more to it.
Yes. Analytic idealism suggests there's also brain activity associated with the process of dissociation itself, the process that maintains the boundaries of our normal everyday alter.
Ah, the activity that keeps the bubble intact, so to speak.
Precisely. So the hypothesis is that psychedelics might work by reducing the effectiveness of this dissociative process. They weaken the boundaries of the bubble.
Okay.
If they reduce the dissociation, then the brain activity correlating with that dissociation would also reduce, which is exactly what the study showed decreased activity.
So less dissociation means less brain activity related to maintaining that dissociation.
That's the hypothesis.
Okay.
And when that dissociation lessens, mental activity that was previously separate outside the bubble can become accessible. Things become more interconnected. This could lead to those richer, non-local, sometimes transpersonal experiences.
Interesting. So reduced brain activity reflects a reduction in the filtering mechanism, allowing a broader range of experience through.
That's the interpretation. Now, what do the physicalists say to try and explain this decreased activity?
Right. How do they square that circle?
One prominent idea revolves around something called brain entropy.
Entropy, like randomness or disorder?
Sort of, yeah. Increased randomness or unpredictability in brain signals. Some studies do show a statistically significant increase in this measure under psychedelics.
Ah, so maybe it's not about the amount of activity, but the pattern. More random patterns equal psychedelic states.
That's the argument they make. But there are some serious issues with it.
Such as?
Well, first, as anyone who's read reports or had such experiences knows, psychedelic states aren't usually described as random noise. They're often incredibly structured, full of symbolism, geometric patterns, meaningful narratives, sometimes feeling more real and organized than normal life.
Right. Random noise doesn't really capture meeting entities or cosmic unity.
Not at all. Second, the actual magnitude of this measured increase in entropy or noise is tiny, like really small. We're talking maybe 0.005 on a scale where normal brain activity varies much more.
So a minuscule increase in randomness is supposed to cause this profound shift in consciousness.
It seems like a mismatch in scale, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And third, this more noise, richer experience idea completely contradicts decades of other neuroscience.
That's so.
Think about dreaming. When you have vivid visual dreams, your visual cortex becomes more active, not less or noisier. If you do something in a lucid dream, like clench your hand, the corresponding motor areas in your brain light up. Ordinary consciousness seems to consistently correlate with increased organized activity in relevant brain areas.
Ah, so physicalism ends up needing two totally different explanations. Reduced activity, more noise for psychedelics, but increased activity for almost every other kind of experience.
Exactly. It seems incoherent. Why would the brain work in one way for normal thought, perception, and dreaming, and then a completely opposite way for psychedelic experiences? Analytic idealism, by contrast, offers a single, consistent framework involving changes in dissociation.
That lack of a unified physicalist account does seem problematic. Are there other neuroscience findings that also fit this pattern, maybe challenging the brain creates mind idea?
Yes, definitely. There are several other lines of evidence that are tricky for standard physicalism. For instance, a study published in Neuron back in 2010.
Oof, what did that one look at?
Brain lesions. Patients who had suffered brain damage, meaning parts of their brain weren't functioning properly.
You'd expect their mental capacities to be reduced, right?
That would be the standard physicalist prediction. But this study measured something called self-transcendence. Basically, the feeling of being connected to something larger than your individual self. identifying less with just the physical body and personal history.
What did they find in the patients with brain damage?
They found a significant increase in self-transcendence scores compared to healthy controls.
So impaired brain function led to an expanded sense of self.
That's what the data indicated. It suggests, again, maybe the brain's normal function helps create the localized sense of self, the alter. And damage to that function can, paradoxically, lead to a broader, more transcendent feeling experience.
Again, the opposite of diminished experience from diminished brain function.
Exactly. It fits the idea that impairing the dissociative mechanism might broaden awareness.
Fascinating. Any other examples?
Yes, there's a study on self-identified mediums, people who claim to channel other personalities or information.
Okay, bit more controversial territory, perhaps.
Perhaps, but they studied them using brain imaging while they were allegedly in a trance state and writing automatically.
And the results?
Experienced mediums showed decreased brain activity in areas usually associated with complex language and writing.
Decreased activity.
Yet, the linguistic complexity of the text they produced during the trance was significantly higher than control subjects who were consciously trying to write complex text and who showed increased brain activity.
So, less brain activity, but more complex output. That really flips the script.
It does. From the analytic idealist view, maybe the trance impairs the normal alter function, less brain activity, allowing access to, well, other streams of information or mental processes, leading to more complex output.
It's a consistent theme emerging.
It seems to be. And you can find echoes of this pattern elsewhere, too. Think about near-death experiences. People report incredibly rich, lucid experiences, often when brain activity is minimal or undetectable during cardiac arrest.
Right. Or hypoxia cases.
Exactly. Things like the choking game, or pilots blacking out under G-force, reduced oxygen, reduced brain function, yet sometimes reports of intense subjective experiences. There's also transcranial magnetic stimulation.
Where they use magnets to temporarily disrupt brain areas.
Yes. Disrupting certain areas can sometimes induce out-of-body experiences. Again, reducing function seems linked to altered, sometimes expanded states.
And things like acquired savant syndrome.
That's another striking example. Brain injury leads to sudden, inexplicable genius in some specific area. Impaired general function, yet extraordinary specific ability emerges. It all points away from a simple, linear relationship where more healthy brain always equals more or better consciousness.
It really does seem like the relationship between brain activity and conscious experience is far more complex, maybe even inverted in some cases, compared to the standard physicalist model.
That's certainly what this range of evidence suggests. And it's worth noting, as you hinted at earlier, that these ideas are finding more space for discussion, even in mainstream outlets.
Yeah, like essays exploring these challenges appearing in places like Scientific American. That suggests a growing openness, doesn't it?
It definitely signals that these aren't just fringe discussions anymore. The data is prompting a serious reevaluation in some quarters.
Okay, so let's try to pull this together. We looked at quantum physics, suggesting the physical world might be more like an observed image than a standalone thing.
The dashboard analogy.
And then neuroscience showing these surprising correlations, often inverse correlations, between brain activity and the richness or type of conscious experience.
Psychedelics, brain lesions, trance states, hypoxia.
Yeah.
A whole collection of findings that don't sit comfortably with the idea that the brain simply manufactures mind, moment by moment, through metabolic activity.
The data really seems to be pushing against that traditional understanding.
It strongly suggests that maybe consciousness isn't generated by the brain in the way we've commonly assumed. Perhaps the brain's role is more like a receiver or a filter, or the extrinsic appearance of localized conscious processes, rather than the generator itself.
Which brings us back to that core idea of analytic idealism, that consciousness might be primary.
It provides one framework that seems capable of accommodating this diverse evidence from both physics and neuroscience more coherently than traditional physicalism.
It's certainly given us, and hopefully you listening, a lot to think about. So maybe a final thought to leave everyone with.
Go for it.
If, and it's still a big if for many, but if this physical world we perceive is more like that dashboard or those images on the TV screen, if it's an image of a deeper, fundamentally mental reality, what does that actually mean for us?
Yeah, what are the implications?
For how we understand ourselves, our own consciousness, our connection to each other, the nature of death, the universe itself, it really shifts the perspective, doesn't it?
It opens up entirely new ways of thinking about basically everything.
Something to definitely ponder. Perhaps check out the resources linked with this deep dive if you want to explore further. For now, thanks for joining us.
Yes, thanks for listening.